What's good, everyone? Alex Trataros here with another Knicks episode of the Knicks, Jets, etc. podcast. So with me is always my buddy, my coach, my pal, the man with a plan. The man who's gearing up for New York Knicks basketball after coming back from London, watching a heartbreaker.
Bro,
You know
we're on
who
bye
it is,
week.
the one and
We're
only
on bye week, bro.
John Meleka. And we'll somehow find a way to lose this week too, even though it's the bye.
What's up, man? What's up? I don't need to talk about the green and white. I know our guest is a Jets fan. We'll get his insights on it later, but this is my bye week, man. This is my week. I don't have to think about them. My favorite week of the Jets year, every single year. We cannot mess it up, even though already the rumors for Marcus May are coming out. But I digress. Everything is good. Knicks preseason. We're here. Taj Gibson, our number one center, ready to go versus the Pistons tonight. Right when this episode drops, I mean everything is good. Good to go right now. How are you?
I'm good.
Big week, huh? You got a big week?
You could say that. You could say it's a big week. Gonna have a lot of fun this weekend. You know what it is. But anyway, we got a phenomenal guest for us today. All right, we got the editor-in-chief of the Strickland, co-host of Locked On Knicks, now also a writer for Clutch Points for Knicks. What do they call it? Knicks Nation over there for Clutch Points? Is that what they call it?
That's the official name. I don't know. I just say Clutch Points. But yeah, I mean, they're the makers of the most entertaining Photoshops on the planet. So
that's a fact. That's a fact. And if you know that voice, you know who it is. We got Alex Wolfe with us today. You all probably should know who this man is. You've seen him guest appear on Knicks Fan TV, Knicks Film School. You know, you hear him on the Strickland podcast. You know he was from Posting and Toasting. Come on, guys.
Yeah,
Alex,
I've been around a little bit.
Man? How you doing, man?
You list it all out like that. I mean, it's a lot of shit. I'm sorry. Do we curse on this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't worry. All right. Yeah. I don't
By
have
the
to
way,
hold
come on,
in.
man. Your Twitter bio says it. Only talk Knicks except when I don't. And so I think it's self-explanatory that all you do is talk Knicks, and you're all around Knicks Nation, Knicks World, Knicks Twitter, everywhere, man. Love your work. Love what you do. Love the content you put out. Know you're a hardworking dude because I can only imagine what it's like being the editor-in-chief and doing all your other positions. So kudos to you, man. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm a little sleep deprived. If to just spell that all out, I'm like, I have been doing quite a bit lately, I guess. Season snuck up on me, but now that it's here, I'm ready for it. I've just been getting back in the flow, with Locked On Knicks. We went back. We have a nice cushy off-season schedule where we get to do like 3 episodes a week if we want. We still did around like 4 most weeks, but now we're back up to 5 episodes a week, and all the Strickland stuff. It's a lot, but it's fun, and I'm looking forward to this season. I mean, what's really nice is that I'm not doing all this in another projected 15 and 62 season or whatever the hell, what would that work out to? 15 and 60. 67.
You're not covering the Jets. We got it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not doing any Jets coverage, so I'm glad that I can just kind of forget that they exist once the Knicks are back. Same with the Mets too. I'm a Mets fan, and just not a great year between those 2 teams this year.
Somehow,
but at least things maybe will be looking up.
How is that possible that right now you're talking about the Knicks in the most positive light of all sports teams right now? Not even condensing it to sport.
Leon Rose, I guess. I mean, I guess that's who we got to thank, right? I mean, it seems like it's pretty much all thanks to his grand plan here that the Knicks are now where they're at. And, I've been like blown away by, I only got to see bits and pieces of the game on Saturday because I was actually doing another New York thing. I was at Comic-Con on Friday and Saturday.
Ooh, nice.
And which was pretty fun. But so I only got to see bits and pieces of that game. But like the first game, I mean, it's just the movement and the shooting and just everything. I mean, they finally built a roster that works again, which is nice. I mean, it reminds me so much of like 12-13, where you could tell that they're just going to jack up threes all freaking day this year, and they're going to hit a really good percentage of them. Like, I think this is going to be a really, really fun year.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's talk about the 2 preseason games we've had so far. When this comes out, it'll be the day of the Knicks playing the Detroit Pistons. But what do you, Alex? I'm going to start off with you. What do you think of the first 2 preseason games that we've seen so far? The New York Knicks. You talk about the ball movement. You talk about the increase in 3-point shooting, which we haven't seen since the 2012-2013 team, which was number 1 in 3-point attempts that season. So, what are your thoughts overall about this team?
I think they're perhaps being slept on a little bit. I think that everything seems to be coming together about as well as we could have expected. I think that, my initial expectations were that there would be a little bit of a learning curve, because you always expect that when there's a bunch of new teammates joining together. I mean, certainly we've seen that with the Knicks for a long time. I mean, the Knicks, like for like a decade, they turned over 70% of their roster every year, in some failed attempt to get better quick. And this time around, actually, the more you think about it, like they really didn't do that much turnover this year. Pretty much the main two moves that they did was, other than things around the margins, which don't matter as much, shout out to like Theo Pinson, who is awesome, but his loss is not a huge loss here other than for the morale category. But like on the court, they kept things pretty similar. You just replace Bullock with Fournier, and replace, of course, Alfred Payton with Kemba Walker, which is like maybe one of the biggest upgrades in Knicks history. But other than that, there's a pretty good amount of continuity. So I think we're kind of seeing that play out. Like these guys, a lot of them know each other's spots already. Taj is familiar with what's going on the floor and can step right in as the starting center in a preseason game. And, the team doesn't skip a beat. And Julius and RJ obviously have their great chemistry that they've flashed already, dating back to last year, which is still so cool that they did manage to reach that point, and that they're at that point now after RJ's rookie year and Julius's first year on the team. So many fans disliked Julius because they felt that he was freezing RJ out, that he and Alfred were playing like buddy ball. And then last year it just totally got flipped on its head. And it was like Julius and RJ were best friends and Alfred was kind of getting frozen out. So it's cool to see how their dynamic will continue to grow. But like Kemba and Fournier are pros, like, so they're just going to step right in and do what they're asked to do, I think. And, I think as long as they can stay and keep healthy, that they're going to be a lot better than I think people thought. And, I know there's some expected regression, with the 3-point shooting and stuff, because I mean, they did, I think, I don't have it in front of me, but I think the Knicks had 40+% 3-point shooters last year, if you count just Rose's time after he came to the Knicks. But if nothing else, it's somewhere close to that. And I mean, that's obscene. That's a lot of good shooting on the team, even if they didn't shoot the most attempts of them.
Yep.
But like, when you have a team with that many shooters that are coached by a coach that I think has done pretty miraculously in adjusting, things that people said that he wasn't going to adjust. His defensive scheme, I think, is now much more focused on getting guys into the middle and also being willing to concede 3-pointers to bad 3-point shooters and stuff like that. There's all these
Playing
little
rookies.
tactical things. Yeah. Playing rookies, playing second-year players, not being afraid to do that anymore, which was like a big knock on Tibbs. I think as long as they stay healthy, there's going to be regression all around the league, not just on the Knicks, because everybody's not going to be shooting in empty buildings anymore. And I think people keep forgetting about that when you're talking about just the Knicks. And so I think that relative to the rest of the competition in the league, they're still going to look really good from three, and they're going to be shooting more of them this year. And I think that if I was going to set like a ceiling for it, I might actually, with all the tumult going on with last year's top two teams in not obviously how the final standings worked out, but in the regular season last year, top two teams were the Sixers and the Nets. Obviously so much going on there right now with both those franchises. It wouldn't surprise me if everything went right for the Knicks. They might end up like a 3 seed this year, and might actually improve upon last year. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily realistic, but I do think I'm setting expectations somewhere between the 3 and 6 seed, and I don't see any way they fall below 6. I think there's too much talent there, short of some catastrophic injuries, at least to me.
Where does that bring your win total?
50 plus, I guess. It would be.
Oh, he's beating me, Alex. Because I got 50, and Alex been like, "Oh, you're crazy." I've been Jolito's been holding me to my 50 burger all preseason. Alex has, what do you have? 47,
48. I'm at
48. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
didn't go through and do like the 1-by-1 thing, but I think I would probably come in somewhere around 50 if all goes according to plan. I think that would be about where I'd be too.
I mean, going off your last article, right, for clutch points, You already talked about Kemba and how he obviously is one of the biggest upgrades in Knicks history from point guard, but also one of the best starting point guards we had. However, I mean, there's the injury stuff, which there's no speculation there. It's just whatever happens. You just have to see it through. But what I thought was interesting was your comments about Fournier and how that's really like the perfect fit.
Mhm.
So let me ask you why you think that Fournier is the perfect fit into this team, and kind of what's the difference between that and Bullock? Because there's been this whole, I don't know where it came from, but as soon as you leave, the Knicks, your stats just go up, right? Like all of a sudden your NBA like 2K stats just like rise up. All of a sudden Bullock was the best defender ever, and all of a sudden he was a lights out shooter. Like I don't know where that was. Like I don't know where that happened. So what do you like? What are your thoughts on Bullock leaving, and where do you think that Fournier is going to be able to why is he the perfect fit to replace him?
So I don't think Bullock's a bad player by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, actually, to your point, son, you just said, I actually do think you could reliably call him a knockdown shooter last year. I mean, he was very consistently shooting 50% in various games, on high volume. And, if he got real hot, he got real hot. He's a fantastic spot up shooter. As far as his defense, I mean, I think he was made to look a little better by Tibbs's scheme. He was often entrusted with some of the best players on the other team, and I think he did an admirable enough job with some of them. I mean, nobody can really guard Trae Young all that well. That's just a fact of life, unfortunately. Nobody can really lock up Damian Lillard or Steph Curry or someone like that. It's a reason why these guys are the best scorers in the NBA, or some of them, is that they're pretty much impossible to fully lock down. So you just kind of do what you can against them. And I think he did fine with that. And I think he's a good enough defender. But I think that he maybe got a little too much credit as a one-on-one shutdown defender that, is the guy that's going to put someone on an island or whatever. And I also think that you don't necessarily need that in Tibbs's scheme here. And also I think RJ Barrett is looking like he's probably ready to step into that number one defender role, which
hell yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, he said it over training camp and then showed it in that game against Washington. He made Beal's life hell. And Beal is one of the best scorers at the wing and guard position in the entire NBA. So, just pure scorer wise, he's probably, if you're just talking about a guy that can put the ball in the hoop, he's probably at least top 6 or 7 or so. Not considering all aspects of his game, and all aspects of everybody else's game. But that's a fantastic scorer that can drop 30 on any given night. And I think has averaged 30 at a time in his career. And RJ, shut him down. But to go to Fournier now, he does so many of the things that I know, at least on Locked On Knicks, I feel like I made this point 10,000 times, but one of the biggest things that really killed the Knicks in that series against the Hawks was that the Hawks have one of the worst defenders in the NBA in Trae Young in their starting lineup that plays big minutes for them. And they were able to hide him on Reggie Bullock. And it was so obvious that was exactly what they wanted to do right from the start. They had no interest in having Trae guard Derrick Rose or Quickly or anyone that could potentially burn him off the dribble. They stuck him on Bullock because they knew that Bullock can't dribble. And I say this in terms of NBA stuff. Obviously, if you put Reggie Bullock on a court with the three of us, he would whoop our asses, and would cross us up and do whatever he wanted. But on NBA court, he can't take more than a few dribbles before the ball is almost taken out of his hands. And that is so different from Fournier. And I mean, even just from minute one in that preseason game, that's the biggest thing, is that Fournier has creation ability. He's not I know that you can envision this play, right? There were so many times where Randle and Bullock would run quick motions for each other, right? One of the most popular ones that they would do would be Randle would start dribbling the ball across the court around the 3-point line, and then would basically set a screen and simultaneously hand off to Bullock coming around his side, and Bullock would pull up for 3. But if that play ever got busted up and the guy got over the screen and stayed with Bullock was dead in the water. He wouldn't know what to do. He would try to put it on the floor for 1 second and then panic, and then eventually have to find Julius again. And then Julius is stuck with, maybe 8 seconds left on the shot clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just essentially, okay, figure it out, and then you get some of the less good Julius attempts, that they're still not all perfect from him. That's when you get those less savory attempts from him. With Fournier, it's so different. I mean, I saw them literally in the first preseason game running those plays immediately, where it was almost like, I described this on Locked On Knicks, as it was almost like if Bullock was watching it, he must have felt like a scorned ex-lover or something, you know what I mean? Like, because they were running the same exact plays, where it was Julius comes up, sets that little screen, Fournier takes it. But then when Fournier would get caught in the headlights, he wouldn't freeze. He would just be like, okay, I'm going to put the ball on the floor and I'm going to use the screen in a different way and start trying to get into the lane. And then we've already seen that play out in multiple different ways, where sometimes he hits a cutter. So, after someone comes in to try to stop him at the rim, sometimes he kicks it right back out to Julius if both guys overhelp trying to get in on him. And then Julius gets a wide open three, which, like, I still don't know if he understands what to do with wide open shots yet. He'll get there as the season goes on, but he's so used to just taking like contested everything because he has to create it all for himself. But that's the big difference to me with Fournier. Literally, it's just that one skill: put the ball on the floor and be able to get to the rim, or at least pretend like you're getting to the rim, at least move around and also be able to pull up on the run, all this stuff. I mean, Fournier is just a really talented 18 to 20 point per game NBA scorer at his best, who does it on pretty good efficiency, and has effectively at times in his career functioned almost like a star player for like the Magic, for example, where he was their go-to scorer, especially in the playoffs when like Vucevic would get more taken out of games. Fournier had to be like the guy, and he's proven that he can do that to a degree. Although he kind of gets he kind of has a rep of being bad in the playoffs, but I just, I feel like that's mostly due to being over, what's the word I'm looking for? Like over relied upon in his role with the Magic, and then just sort of being generally uncomfortable with the team and the scheme and everything in Boston last year, I think is why he had a real hard time there. Because it was just, he came there mid-season, he got COVID, he was out for like 3 or 4 weeks. Finally comes back, he gets all of like 10 games, and then it's the playoffs against the freaking Brooklyn Nets, who are like literally, they were the number one title
worst
favorite.
Worst matchup possible for him, especially when you come back from COVID too. And also
Exactly.
for like that team too, like you're talking about, he's another wing in a system that already has 2 all-star wings with Jaylen Brown and like Jason Tatum. Like, where do you find time for you, like trying to play with those guys? It's just too many wings on the court at once, or even like when you're coming in for like the second unit, you've hadn't had enough time to get enough reps with those guys. It's not going to be easy for anyone. And I'm going to transition to this point because you brought it up too, and it goes really well with your article for point number 3, is that making life for Julius Randle easier when he has these wide open threes. What do you think for Julius, man? Like, what do you think for like Randle, like coming in here, like he has like so much floor spacing now. Like, yeah, you talk about Kemba, you talk about Evan Fournier, who's able to put the ball on the floor and just open up everything for not just Randle, but everyone on the team, like RJ, and once Mitch or even Noel comes back. But do you think Julius, are we going to see like a uptick in Julius's numbers, or you think he's going to be just more efficient in general?
My hope, and this might sound weird, is that counting stats wise, at least, there's not an uptick in Julius's numbers, because I hope that he'll be able to play less minutes. So I hope that by virtue of having a year older Obi Toppin, who clearly seems to have made his own strides. I mean, Obi has looked fantastic so far through summer league and through the first bit of the preseason here. Maybe you now reach a point where Julius can start playing 33 minutes a game instead of like 38. And over the course of a season, that adds up. That's like 5 times 8. That's like almost 500 minutes less. Or let's say like 400, a little over 400 minutes less, I guess, is how much that works out to.
Huge for the playoffs.
Yeah, huge. I mean, it keeps his legs healthier. It reduces risk of injury. Granted, Julius plays in such a way that I think is intentionally designed to not get injured, because he's a very good athlete, and he doesn't flash it that much with verticality and things like that. He keeps himself mostly grounded, and I think it's because he understands that's what's best for his health. But, that goes all the way back to his rookie year. I mean, when he freak broke his leg, I think he just kind of learned to keep himself more ground bound after that. But as far as his, percentages and stuff go, I mean, I don't necessarily know that I expect an uptick, because I mean, my God, last year he shot so good. I mean, it was like mid-range, he almost shot like 50%, which like just doesn't happen anymore. 3-point, he shot, over 41%, I think was the final number. And then, the free throw line in the 80s like that. I see all that potentially happening again, maybe with a slight downtick, but I think a lot of people, especially because of the playoffs and how flustered he looked, kind of thought like, oh, this is because of the crowds and not just because of like, he was being keyed to like crazy in very subtle ways that made it really hard for him to get good shots off. So, I think that he's still going to shoot fine. And I think that maybe there'll be a little bit of a downtick because I think the whole league is, I alluded to this a minute ago, but I think the whole league is going to have a bit of a downtick because of fans being back and all that stuff. But I wouldn't be surprised if he still shot 45% overall, close to 40% from three, and mid 80s from the free throw line. And I think that would be great. And the best part is that a lot of that's going to be a lot easier for him. He won't have as much of a downtick in the 3-point shooting as some other guys might that do a lot of self-creation and stuff like that, because he's going to not have to create so many of them. We've already seen him working with Kemba Walker as the roll man and the pop man again in the pick and roll and pick and pop, which is something we hadn't really seen too much of since like New Orleans with him. But he's obviously a much better player now. And I mean, he's going to get so many of those open looks with Kemba, with Fournier, with, he could even run those like reverse pick and rolls with RJ or Fournier or whoever he wants, someone who's big enough to take a screen like that and, maybe get to the rim more himself that way. There's going to be so much more room on the floor, I think, for him this year compared to last year. And we already saw it in that first preseason game when he played. Like, it almost seemed like he didn't know what to do with himself. Like, I'm sure if you could have gone into his brain at that moment, it would have just been like a giant smile. And that was all he could even think of, because it was just, he was so like, he looked so free to me on the floor out there. And I think that's sort of a foretelling of what these additions are going to do for him compared to, the limited but good shooting Bullock last year, the complete zero on offense, Alfred Payton, plus RJ Barrett, a year older, a year wiser, a year better. And hopefully Mitchell Robinson coming back to give that gravity right around the rim. I think we're in for a treat as far as like Julius's responsibilities on offense this year. I think they're going to be a lot less, which will actually be a good thing.
That's a good take. I'm really happy that the Knicks have finally, like you said, Leon Rose, right, in the beginning of this episode. Like, I'm so happy that we finally have caught up to the modern NBA where we're playing defense. We have like centers that just want to get the rebound, like get those second chance opportunities. We finally have a point guard. And I guess we're going to live and die by the three, right? I guess that's the modern NBA. But I'm worried, man. Like, you seem so confident about that. But that actually worries me. Like, RJ Barrett sitting in the corner, having the NBA record for threes. Julius Randle at damn near 50%, from 3-point line. Like, isn't that gonna, kind of regress back to the norm of like kind of like closer to 40?
Yeah, but I mean
30-ish. Like, that stuff worries me. Like, are you? How about this? Let me ask both of you this. Are you guys confident with the Knicks' strategy to live and die by the three?
I'll let you go, Alex, first if you want.
Are you talking about yourself? No, just
yeah, how are we gonna differentiate that?
Trust me, when we had Macri on here the first time, and I was like, John, and you're like, yes, and I was like, oh, right. I was like, this is tough. We'll just call you Wolf for right now.
That's fine. That's good. All
right. I feel like everyone calls you Wolf too, right?
A lot of people do call me that. Yeah. So
okay.
it's a nice last name. It flows.
It's a great one syllable. Great last name. It's an awesome animal too. Like,
it is. Awesome. I agree. They're
a badass animal. So
thanks to the last name, I'm a big fan of the animal too. So,
but I think to answer your question, John, I don't think the Knicks are necessarily going to live and die by the three. I don't think it's going to be like the Daryl Morey. We're going to just shoot threes and just get to the rim. I think Tibbs is too smart to understand to give up the mid range. I mean, we just saw the NBA Finals with the Bucks and the Suns, where the mid range is still useful. You can still watch the Clippers where the mid range is still useful. The mid range is not dead. So I don't think we're going to see this crazy uptick where it's like, all right, we're just going to take a bunch of threes and then have Julius Randle just hang out down low by the rim, or just, if he's going to shoot a three, he's just going to be down by the rim. I think when you watch the first preseason game and you see Kemba Walker pulling up for a mid-range jumper, when you see RJ pulling up for mid-range jumpers, like it's just an effective way to create that three-level spacing to keep the defense guessing, right? And if you don't know where someone's going to take their next shot, that means you have to truly honor them at all three phases. And keeping a defense on their toes is just the number one scheme to creating offense. So I don't think we're going to see anything too like crazy, like to live and die by the three. I think you're seeing just a well-balanced attack where 3-pointers are now actually going to be utilized on this team. Like as Wolf pointed out, we had 40% shooters. We had Bullock, we had RJ, we had Randle, and D Rose. You know, D Rose wasn't necessarily a high volume 3-point shooter, but still like efficient when he took threes. And now when you add guys like Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier, who are talking about guys who are closer either at the 40% 3-point shooting as well, and can just also create for themselves. It's a different level of just creating offense than just what we saw last season, where it was just, all right, here's some spot up shooters. Randall's our only guy that can create, or Burks, you go create something, or Rose, you go create something. I think we're really going to see something
literally lived
different.
and died by Burks during those days, huh?
Yeah, there were definitely some days where it was live and die by Burks. Yeah.
I remember that.
He was
like,
the
please
offense.
make a play for us, man. Like we don't have anyone else. Like I specifically remember those games now.
I mean, you want to talk about a throwback. Think about how long ago this feels, even though it was literally this calendar year. Think about the Austin Rivers Jazz game where he scored like 30 points. I mean, that was a game where he was the only offense that the Knicks could produce. It was freaking Austin Rivers, who wasn't even on the team by the end of the year, and was like out of the rotation
too. Oh my God, we beat the Jazz. Austin Rivers is back, making what was it? What was like we're making like Rivers t-shirts?
Quivers.
Yeah.
Quickly and Rivers, which quickly turned into Quickly. God, Quickly's name is just so easy to pun. Which turned into Quickly and Rose then, which we never really came up with like a nickname for, but
so funny.
Yeah, I was gonna say though, like to your point, Alex, like I agree very much. Like I think the mid-range is being a little overlooked here. And of course, I was talking about the threes and the volume of threes. And I do think they're going to take a ton of them. And like, so one guy I just looked up because I was curious. I felt like I didn't have to look up. Like, you know, for a fact that Julius Randle can shoot in the mid-range, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a given. You know for a fact that Kemba Walker, I mean, he's made a career out of pull-up shooting from everywhere on the court. So you know that he's going to be able to shoot in the mid-range if you need him to. Evan Fournier also. This is a guy that I looked up because I wasn't sure what the numbers bore out here, but I just pulled it up on Cleaning the Glass. And I'm going to use his Orlando sample size from last year because I think that's a better indication. Although I guess, I mean, it doesn't let me average them together here. He, on short mid-range attempts last year, was 31 of 61. That put him in the 91st percentile in the NBA. He was 21 of 47 from long mid-range, which put him in the 73rd percentile. That averaged out in total to 48% from mid-range period, which was in the 91st percentile overall in the NBA for wings, I should say. They categorize everything by your position. So for wings, he was a 91st percentile mid-range shooter, shooting almost 50%, which is, if you're keeping notes at home,
impressive. About
what Julius Randle was shooting from mid-range. And then from three with the Magic last year, also he was in the 74th percentile. So I guess like my thing where I would push back John about like, you know, what happens if the 3-pointers, you know, regress some, you know, like regress to the mean, right? What is the mean? The mean is a bunch of above average shooters. So if they're not shooting stupidly above average, you know, then they just start shooting above average again. And so maybe Julius goes back to, I mean, I think there's no way to, you could just see by virtue of his mid-range shooting and his 3-point shooting that there's no denying like Julius Randle just is a better shooter now than he was 2 years ago on the Knicks. So I don't think it's reasonable to ever assume that he's going to go back to that level. Same thing with RJ Barrett. Like we've seen it in these 2 preseason games. You know, I don't think he's ever going to go back to his rookie self that was shooting 32%. I think he's just a better shooter now. And there's no real, you know, there might be regression to the point of having some cold stretches here and there that lowers his, you know, his season average to 37% for a while or something, but he's still going to be an above average 3-point shooter. Kemba Walker has a whole career to show that he's an above average 3-point shooter at this point. Evan Fournier, same deal. has shot around 40% a number of years from 3-point range. So I think that's never going to go away. That's going to be there no matter what. The thing that I would say maybe has been slightly overlooked with this team, like from a team building perspective, is finishing around the rim. I think that's a little spotty, particularly without Mitch. Once you get Mitch back, obviously that's kind of like your safety valve. That's the guy that you want to look for around the rim anytime you can. But without him, like Nerlens, we've seen can't really do much around there. He's just
especially catch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the main thing. He can't catch. Once he catches it, he's better at throwing it down. He's fine, but he has bad hands. Taj is really good, but I mean, he's somewhat limited in his offense capacity. He has the guile to get things done down there, but like Randle is a little below average finishing around the rim. RJ Barrett, like for as good as he is at getting there, is actually not the best at finishing around the rim either. Fournier definitely isn't. And never really has been a great finisher around the rim. I mean, for example, if I'm just looking at the numbers here, I mean, actually, I guess 1920 Fournier did finish in the 82nd percentile around the rim, 67% as a wing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's pretty solid. But last year shot even at his best 62%, which was in the 49th percentile. So, I mean, he's going to struggle a little bit, though. He's pretty good at drawing fouls. So, I guess there's that to consider. But like Rose and Kemba, they used to be better at that aspect of the game, are not so much now that their athleticism has dwindled a little bit. And then quickly, like really, that's something he really needs to work on. Obi, that's something he really needs to work on. That's sort of like the number one concern for me is getting to the rim. So actually, like if we're talking about Morey ball, I think that they've got the 3-point part down, but the getting to the rim, drawing fouls, making those shots, converting 3-point plays, stuff like that. Those are things that maybe could bite them a little bit this year. And like, they're going to need to really, I guess, hope for one, work on selling calls better, but then for two, hope that they get a better whistle than they've gotten in previous years. Cause I mean, that's something that comes with respect, I think, in the NBA, how good of a whistle you get, even though it should be impartial.
I mean, we saw that with IQ, right? Like he literally did the Trae Young. I'll never forget that in game 5, like toward that last, like, that was like the last possession or two when the game was over, but he literally did the Trae Young foul and he just didn't call it. I was like, all right, like this is just like ridiculous. But I'm glad that I feel like Morey ball is dead forever now without the Harden Trae Young call, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like dead. I think the general concept still exists. The shooting threes and getting to the rim is still the most efficient, and getting to the free throw line, I should say too, which comes along with getting to the rim. Those are still the most efficient way to get points in the NBA. And I think that that's still going to be a trend, but I do think that there's something to be said for, I mean, like you guys mentioned, like the Bucks and a number of other teams, once you hit it also like the Suns, I mean, the Suns use the mid-range a ton. Once you hit a certain point in the NBA, that the cute little things that get you through the regular season, like shooting a zillion threes and doing basically nothing else, teams all of a sudden take that away from you. And if you can't hit the shots in the hard to make spots, then you're kind of screwed. But I think the Knicks are actually pretty well equipped for that this year. But yeah, to say like Morey ball is totally dead, I think Morey ball just sort of almost became like a caricature of like the modern NBA style. And, I don't think it's necessarily dead. I don't think the NBA is getting away from that, but I don't know if anybody's going to try quite as comically to, push the limits of that this time around. Like even the Warriors never quite did what Morey did with the Rockets, with like essentially being like, we don't care about positions. We literally just want shooters out there. We'll basically hemorrhage points on the other end and not care about it. As long as we're scoring more than you, then we're happy. I don't think anybody else can do that quite to that extreme. So in that respect, I do think maybe Morey ball is dead.
Yeah, I think like I agree with you, Alex. I don't think it's necessarily dead. It's just changed. It's just modified because when you saw the Rockets, now we're going back to when the Rockets played the Warriors, and you just see them like, I forget how many times they put up, but they just were clanking everything for when the Warriors to go face the Cavs, and then the Warriors lose to the Cavs. Was that 2015-16 season we're talking about? Like, I think when you watch that game, that's why teams start to slowly shift away, but it's not totally dead. Teams are still shooting a high amount of threes, and they're looking for 3-point shooters because they just want more spacing on the floor. They want players who are just athletic and capable of getting to the rack or just creating like just maybe a one-on-one for their one big man who's down there so they can get an easy like attempt at the rim. I don't think it necessarily is completely dead, but I think it's funny though, talking about finishing at the rim, like probably our best finishers on this team though is one Kemba Walker and maybe Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose, I know didn't have like, he wasn't highly ranked last season with finishing at the rim, but he's known to be like a good player to get to the rim and finish. So I just find it funny that both our top point guards on this team are like our best finishers when outside of Mitch, obviously outside of Mitch, just like in the restricted area. But moving along, like, so Alex, what are your expectations for like this season moving forward? Like, we've made these upgrades. We see that the play style, because we can see these past games they're whipping the ball around the court. You see Quickly and Obi who have taken that step forward where you have Quickly now being able to drive and penetrate, keep his dribble alive, and like whip the ball back out to the perimeter. Like seeing it against the Wizards this past weekend, seeing him push it out to Burks, who then Burks to Rose back to Burks, and you see that open three. Like, that's the beautiful basketball like we've been missing from this team to be part of that modern NBA. And now when you see all these guys taking that step up, you see the dynamic of this, the dynamic nature of this team. What are your expectations for this team for this season? Is it like how far do you expect them to go? What do you want them to be ranked this season? I know you said you can see them being between the third and the sixth seed. You can see them being a 50+ win team, but what are your expectations for this team? Like, what are the concrete numbers?
I hate making like exact predictions. I like ranges.
Okay.
So, if I was going to set a range, like I could see anywhere from like 45 to like 52 wins, if things go the absolute best. I really don't think they're going to get less than like 45 wins. I just think there's too much talent on the team at this point. They have, there's so many play, like literally their bench is probably almost as good as some of the like tanking teams starting lineups right now, which is kind of, like
I would
Orlando,
take our bench over Orlando starting lineup,
or like OKC minus SGA. Like, they definitely are beating, like they're washing them. It's just, and they're so much better than so many other benches in the league. And that depth, I think, is going to allow them to absorb any potential injuries from like Kemba Walker or Derrick Rose, or even, don't even call it injuries, even just, hopefully Tibbs is receptive to the idea of rest. I think part of the reason last year that guys really got like run like thoroughbreds is that there was just not a lot of options on last year's team. Like if Julius didn't play 40 minutes in whatever game, they were probably going to lose. And if they didn't play Derrick Rose 40 minutes in any, given game down the stretch there, they were probably going to lose because you couldn't afford to play Alpha Payton. If Reggie Bullock, for all of his limitations, if he didn't play, 40 minutes in certain games when he was hot, you were going to lose that game. You needed those presences on the team. This year, there's so much depth. There are two guys on the team, the two rookies. I shouldn't leave out Sims. I think Sims is a little further off from being a real contributor as long as the other three are healthy, which is a big if, obviously, or even if just two of those guys are healthy. I think that Sims is a little ways away.
Are you worried about Noel? I know, sorry, sidetrack. Are you worried about Noel not playing?
No, I feel like it's just maintenance. I feel like if it was anything serious, we'd hear about it, right? Like, right. I think that it's just, he probably just tweaked something or something like that, and they're just being overly cautious. Like,
I think they said the hamstring today. I think I saw it was like a hammy that he was just tending to.
And I think they understand right now too, like, don't push him because Mitch's status is unsure right now. So you don't want to compound your problem in preseason by playing Nerlens Noel when you already know exactly what
you're going to get. Don't say compound, bro. Don't say compound on Mitch Robinson.
Yes. So you know what I mean? Like, just so you don't want to make your situation worse where then you're having to rely on Taj and Jericho Sims, your center rotation. But anyway, I was saying, like, about the depth, like, you have Grimes and McBride just sitting on the bench, like two guys that, I think we could reasonably say at this point, based off what we've seen from Deuce, like, he probably could have been a late first round pick also. Like, you could swap where they were drafted, or like, you could have told me that the Knicks took McBride at Grimes' spot, and then, or you took them honestly at 19 and 21, if they kept those 2 picks, let's put it that way. They kept those 2 picks and taken these 2 same guys at 19 and 21, based off how they played so far, I wouldn't question that decision at all. And, you have these guys that probably aren't even going to get playtime unless there's injuries. But should there be injuries, I think that they'll be able to step in pretty admirably. You have Quickly, who by and large will probably be getting like 17 to 20 minutes a game. And, reasonably looks like he's probably ready for like 25 to 30 minutes a game. So if you want to rest Derrick Rose or Kemba Walker for a game, you can very easily just be like, okay, Quick, you're playing 30 minutes tonight. Like that's that. And you won't skip a beat because he's really good. Same thing with Obi. Like you could even give Randle a rest night from time to time, as crazy as that sounds.
You hear that? You hear that, Tratacaster?
Yeah.
It from Mr. Alex Wolfe's mouth. I've been on the Obi hype train all preseason, and I've been getting some heat for it. But dude, I mean, he's old. You know what I mean? Like he's if we're making fun of him for being an older rookie, he's also an older sophomore. This is when it starts to come into fruition. This is when it's on your side. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, he's already pretty much done growing. So that's the thing. Is like some people are like, oh, he looks stronger. Like he looks like exactly the same person as last year to me. Like body wise, he is developed, man. Like he's like 23 years old now. Like not too many guys continue growing past like 22. But yeah, so I mean, I think you can, even if it's not a full rest night for Julius, like, maybe you just get out ahead once or twice and you just play Julius 20 minutes and then just be like, okay, Obi, you're up for 28 today. So I think the depth is going to carry them along. So as far as setting expectations, like, yeah, I think that they're going to have a high floor and also a high ceiling. I mean, I think it's sort of a win-win because of that depth. All I expect out of them is just to bust their asses. I mean, but like, what else do they do? There's nobody on this team that's going to mail it in. And they built it that way intentionally. I mean, they signed all these guys, drafted all these guys because they know that they're Tibbs players. Like, I think people misconstrue what a Tibbs player is. It's not necessarily a defensive stalwart. Like he likes those sort of players for certain positions. He definitely loves having a center that's extremely defensively versatile. And he likes having a couple of like switchy wings and that sort of thing. But like by and large, and sometimes it's just been by virtue of injuries and stuff back in his time with Chicago and whatever. But the types of point guards and like shooting guards he likes, he's not necessarily all on board with like super defensive minded guys, as was sort of evidenced by his lack of using Frank Ntilikina last year, who was a really good defensive guard. He's more about these, like, he just wants guys that really bust their ass. And like from most of his players, he wants guys that bust their ass on defense and that are ballsy enough to take hard shots and create hard shots for themselves. And not to the point of being foolish, but guys that have that sort of like killer instinct on the offensive end. And I think the Knicks have done a good job of building basically a whole team of those guys that, they all play defense as hard as they possibly can. I mean, we've even seen in preseason, like stuff from Kemba that I don't remember the last time I ever saw Kemba play defense like that. Last year, I don't remember the last time I saw. Bro. Yeah,
in preseason, and it's preseason. Nonetheless, he's playing crazy defense at the point guard position.
And like, I don't remember the last time I saw Derrick Rose play defense like he did last year, or Julius Randle. I mean, who was like a turnstile his first year with the Knicks, was one of their best defensive stoppers last year. And actually, if you look at, there's like a tool on B-Ball Index that you can use called like the the defensive versatility tool, I think, something like that, where they actually chart like how much time players spend guarding each position on the floor. And Randall ranked out in like the top 20-25 players last year in the league or something like that, in that statistic, like of his defensive versatility and like being able to guard any position on the floor. He's one of the like probably 30 best players in the NBA at that. So yeah, all this is a roundabout way of saying my expectations are probably higher than most. Like I really do think that the Knicks floor this year is probably like 45 wins. I think that would probably be enough to escape the play-in. So I think that as far as like a floor for where they could end up end of season wise, I think about the 6th seed is the lowest I would potentially go, short of again, short of catastrophic injuries and stuff like that.
Right.
There's nothing you could do about it if you get like 2 starters and a bench player hurt, and you're stuck with no depth, or limited depth of your already good depth, but it's just, not the same. Like if
making it out of the first round,
I think they could. I'm not necessarily going to be like,
that's what I need. That's just the only thing I need.
Yeah. I think they could push the team to 7 for sure. I think they'll definitely do more than they did this year in the playoffs. I mean, that year of playoffs experience would be very helpful to them. It also might weirdly help them if they end up a lower seed this year and don't have that pressure of being the home playoff team in game 1 and 2.
Being at the Garden, man, I honestly tend to agree.
Yeah. I mean, it's
like
a good
that last play by Trae Young. It was they're playing with house money. He could have airballed that shot, and the Hawks would have been completely fine going into game 2. He made that shot. It was all over. The energy was completely sucked out of the Garden and the Knicks. It didn't even matter that we won game 2. Like, it was almost like a whatever. We act like we won the Super Bowl. Atlanta was like, all right, sounds good. We'll see you in Atlanta. We're up. We're up on the series now. We stole home field. So I'm honestly with you, man. That was such a hard game, man. Game 1 in the Garden. Expectations, because you had the home field, you have to win. You lost, so everything's over. Like, after game 1 at the buzzer, it was like it might as well throw in the whole towel. So I agree with you, dude.
Yeah, I unfortunately felt kind of the same after that game 1. I tried to talk myself into like, oh, it's all right, they can get it right, they can do some stuff in Atlanta, blah blah. Look what they did to this team in the regular season. But you sort of felt it, like, in their body language and just how defeated that left them. And that's why I'm saying, like, I think, weird as it is to say, like, it might be good for them if they end up, say, the 5 seed and end up against whoever the 4 seed ends up being. Maybe it's Miami or something, to get to go to Miami or whatever and be like, okay, it's on us. Like, we can steal game 1 now, and be the underdog. This team does pretty well. I mean, they certainly did well last year, being the underdog. And I mean, someone ran the numbers on if you bet in favor of the money line for the Knicks on every single game and put like a slightly compounding amount of money, like, you could have made like $1 million last year, because they beat they beat so many money lines and everything else. Like, almost every game, they were projected to lose for the first half of the season or so. And then even once they went on their streak, people were still being like, Knicks by 1 point, whatever. Like,
hey, let me tell you something, because I do a little bit of sports gambling for Tally site, and they asked me to cover the Knicks for that site. I somehow came up with like close to like a 60% rate of choosing the line. Like, just make it like, I was like, thank you, Knicks, for covering. Thank you for covering every single night. Like, because they covered. They covered
like crazy last year, bro.
I think they covered like 19 games in a row. I think that was like something like of like
during their win streak.
Yeah, it was during their win streak. Even when they were losing too, they weren't losing by many points. It was like a field goal, like here or there. But they covered. Like, most of the lines were like 5-6, so they were always within like a 5-6 point. Like, obviously if they win, they covered. But if they were like losing, it was nothing more than 5 or 6 points that they were losing by, because they were just a really good defensive team last year. That's why they were in the top 5. Sorry to cut you off, Alex.
Oh, it's okay. No, yeah, you definitely know better than me then, if you're doing the lines and everything. Yeah, I mean, they just like they scrap so much. I think that's still going to be the identity of the Knicks this year, because I think that, I mean, they're not oblivious clearly to what goes on as far as like things that are written about them and things that are said on social media and stuff like that. And I'm sure that they've been paying attention to all these people saying, oh, I'd be surprised if the Knicks, avoided the play-in this year or whatever. They're going to regress that much that they're going to go from the 4 seed to a play-in team. And yeah, I'm sure that they see this stuff and they're like, all right, we'll just keep talking, we'll figure it out. And maybe they do end up a 5 seed this year, which I would not consider a failure by any stretch of the imagination, but
not at all.
The media might paint it that way, and then they'll go into that series being like, well, all right, fine, we'll just win the series, then tell us we did worse than last year.
Yeah, I think no play-in is the win for the regular season.
Yes,
and getting out of the first round is the win for the playoffs. If you do both those things, like, no matter what happens, like, you are successful.
I think the East tell me what you guys think about this. I think that this narrative that the East got way better in the offseason is a little overblown. Like, I don't care if they're putting up like 150 points in preseason games. Like, I really don't think that the Bulls are going to be that
Bulls
great.
No,
They have no
no.
defense.
And like because they have no defense. Like the Celtics got worse demonstrably.
Yes.
Like they're definitely worse. The Heat. I mean, you add Lowry. Yeah, I get that's a pretty big addition, but I
think people are sleeping on Depot.
Yeah, I mean,
I think they're sleeping.
Yeah. Like, are they going to be that much better? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. I think the Heat are. I think the Heat might slip into that 3-4 seed, and I think I know you're asking about the East and especially the juggernauts at the top. I think it's really the Nets are going to be there, man. The Nets got better, and they're going to be there. Doesn't matter. I think the Nets are better without Kyrie, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, I think they're going to be the number 1 seed, but it's really going to come down to what happens with the 76ers and Ben Simmons. And I think that's a huge problem. I don't think Doc Rivers is really the coach that everyone thinks he is. And honestly, how hungry are the Bucks going to be coming off a chip? Like the whole thing about Milwaukee, the whole thing about Giannis, that he's so disrespected and he's trying to get that ring, and everyone's trying so hard to get over the hump. The coach wants a new contract. Everyone wants respect. But now that you get it, I don't know, is Lopez really going to just go on fire like in the beginning? Are they really going to play with, I don't know, that urgency?
I think for this season for the Bucks too, with such a quick turnaround time, I could see there being a little like championship winning hangover where they're going to be competitive. They'll still be like in the top 4, but they're not going to have that fire that they had like last season where they're really going to make that deep playoff push. I agree with you on the Nets. Doesn't matter with Kyrie. You got 2 of the most prolific scorers in the NBA in Harden and Kevin Durant. Kyrie just makes
Achilles, bro.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it. Like he
came back like there's nothing wrong.
It's unbelievable.
So you got those 2. I got those 2 teams. I think Miami did get better, even with Lowry. I think just having like a better floor general on the court for them, I think that does make an improvement. I think you got to give respect to the Hawks. They're still good. They got everyone returning. Once you start getting to the 5 and everything else, that's where I start saying this is where the Knicks can start sliding in. That's where I think the Knicks could be like a 5-6 seed. I think the Indiana Pacers, even though they don't have Karis LeVert, I think they are a very deep team. I think they're going to be a good team. I'm not high on the Celtics either, but you can't write them too far off because having 2 All-Stars and Brown and Tatum, like they'll take you there. Granted, they're going through some COVID issues right now because you have Jaylen Brown who's out with COVID right now, and you have Al Horford, even though Al Horford's not like the major like focal piece, like he is still like a starter on that team that you need to count on. Bulls, they're doing cool stuff right now. I'm with you, John. I think they're just gonna be a fun league pass team because I think they just pass and just shoot decently enough. And then everyone else, like who else? Like maybe the Wizards could be a play-in team still. Like I think a play-in team. They're a play-in team. I don't think they're good, but they're a play-in team. I know you find that disgusting.
I think the team to actually be scared of, and it's disgusting as a Knicks fan to talk about, are the Pacers. I think if LeVert is healthy, I think they're a nice team, man. I know it's disgusting. I know Randle's better than Sabonis. I got you guys. I know Miles Turner stinks and Mitch Robinson is Tyson Chandler. I'm with everyone. I got you. I'm a Knicks fan. However, the Indiana Pacers are a good team. They do have Rick Carlisle now, who needed a new face, and Indiana's always looking for like an actual coach for X's and O's. They got a guy who only does X's and O's now, so he's gonna run plays for Sabonis. He's gonna run plays for Brog. Like he's gonna be good, man. I don't know. I'm really nervous about the technical Pacers team. I really think they could be sneaky like Toronto.
I was going to ask you about Toronto too. And Alex, please chime in. Like, what do you think about Toronto? Because like they had a poor season last year. I'm not thinking they're going to be a top. I think they're another like play-in type team that's just like they're not necessarily got better, but they're still going to be a competitive team that you got to show up to every night.
Yeah, they'll still like try.
The bar is low.
They're not gonna, I don't think that they're gonna tank. Yeah, I just don't think they have that in them. I think Nick Nurse is like too win crazy for that. Sort of like Pop, you know what I mean? Like just where he's like, I'm not gonna let us tank, screw that. Or even like Carlisle. I mean, Carlisle's kind of like that too. I think that they'll give some teams some troubles. They'll probably take one off the Knicks that makes us all go, what the fuck? Like, come on, they won that game. But I think they'll be at best maybe like the 10 spot going into the play-in. They won't be quite as bad as last year, but they are clearly leaning into developing too. Granted, I think Malachi Flynn's gonna have a pretty damn good second year.
I like Malachi Flynn.
I like him a lot.
Yeah,
I still don't have any regrets based off how things have gone because I love Quickly to death.
Yeah.
But like I really liked Malachi Flynn last year, and I was pretty upset the Knicks didn't take him in last year's draft. And I think he's gonna have a really good career. Scotty Barnes, I think, is gonna be really good too. I mean, but there is gonna be a little bit of weird overlap with him and Siakam as well. Like,
yes,
I wouldn't be surprised if we start hearing about Siakam's name in trade discussions by mid-season. And that would be, especially if they're sort of unintentionally tanking, that would be the point where they say, okay, now we're intentionally tanking, and they send off Siakam and just kind of start fresh. And then I agree about the Pacers too. I think they're being slept on a bit as well. Like, I think Carlisle is just one of those coaches that just like juices every little bit that he can out of any given team. Like, he's like
Tibbs.
Exactly. He's just like Tibbs, in that regard, or like Pop to a degree, or like any of those coaches that you can think of that has that reputation for, they don't necessarily have the best roster, but they're gonna make the playoffs, and they're gonna be dangerous any given night. I think that he's that dude, and like they have sort of like this perfect personnel for him. I feel like where it's sort of that like almost superstarless setup, but where everybody can do a job and do it really well as long as everybody's healthy. So like Brogdon, LeVert, Sabonis, Turner, TJ Warren, if he's healthy. I mean, that's a dude that was just casually dropping like 50 points in the bubble. That's a pretty solid starting lineup, and a bunch of, I think Brogdon is severely underrated.
Yeah. I'm worried about them. I'm low-key worried about them.
No, they're a good team. They're very deep.
Yeah, they're good. They're deep. They have some health concerns too, I think, that are gonna kind of like LeVert just can't seem to stay on the floor, and that's his biggest thing.
It's funny because the Knicks and the Pacers are kind of similar setup, and not in the sense of like we got like some good vets, like they got like the vets like Kemba Walker or necessary Derrick Rose, but they're just deep. They're deep, and they got a good head coach at the helm. I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about a 5-6 matchup between the Knicks and the Pacers. No, sorry, it would be like a 4. What I'm talking about, because that's 4 and 5. I wouldn't be surprised if like we got like that 4 or 5 like Knicks Pacers like matchup. I think, and I'd be kind of hyped for that, even though it's like bringing back old bad memories. But I would be hyped for that type of matchup because I think it'd be a good coaching display between Tibbs and Carlisle. I know everyone wants the Hawks. I just want to see really good basketball with like deep teams, but that's just
the Knicks have so many demons to get out, man. Whether we play the Pacers, we can play the Bulls in the playoffs, we can play the Celtics, we can play the Hawks. Like any team we play in the playoffs, there are demons for the Knicks to get out.
Yeah, just go. Let's just we'll arrange it this year so there could be a playoff run of they'll face the Hawks in the first round, and then the Heat in the second round, and I don't know.
We'll get the Pacers in the play-in.
There's no way. There's no way the Bulls are making it that far.
Yeah, that's true. All right, never mind.
We have to switch it. We have to switch it around. We have to start with the Bulls. Somehow.
Okay, the Heater in the ECF, the Bulls in the first round, Pacers sneaking in the second round or something. I don't know. We'll figure something out there. But yeah, the ultimate redemption tour for the Knicks would be pretty sweet. But yeah, you're right. There is I guess it kind of sucks that most of that is a product of bad blood from 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But there's some recent bad blood. I mean, I would consider the Pacers to be a team that I harbor somewhat recent resentment towards for the 12-13 series. So
yes.
They're like a double. They got a double thing. So I think we need this Pacers matchup for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man. I love this team too much. But Alex, we gotta start transitioning to some general NBA topics now. And John, I know you want to talk about this stuff. We got 2 things that happened recently. I'm going to start off with the one that happened today. Besides Miles Powell coming back to the Knicks, being part of the 20-man roster.
Let's go.
Well, welcome back.
Seton Hall. Let's go. I think, all right, I have a theory that he's going to be the second two-way spot because that hasn't been filled yet conspicuously.
Ooh,
So,
I like that.
mhm.
I like that. I like that a
Miles
lot.
Powell.
Makes me happy because I'm originally from Westchester, so I'm like from White Plains. But so I usually go to a lot of the Westchester Knicks games. They're playing in Bridgeport this year because they're still using the county center as a COVID-19 testing center. So I'd have to go out to Bridgeport, which isn't too far from like my hometown. So I'm all down for that drive. But we have Kyrie Irving for the Brooklyn Nets, and the Brooklyn Nets front office came out and said, you know, he's not playing this season, essentially, unless he gets vaccinated. What do you guys think of this? I think, just to give you guys my take, good on the Brooklyn Nets for putting their foot down. You should not have like a part-time player playing like that. Just sounds like nonsense and putting people at risk. That's just my opinion. But what do you guys think, Alex? I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I mean, good on the Nets. Like, I mean, as much as we don't want to give them credit for anything, you know, as Knicks fans, like the organization. I mean, this actually, you know, amongst all the other things that have sort of transpired since they were like the culture poster children, you know, like during the D'Angelo Russell year and whatever. Like this, I think, is their first thing that they've done in the last couple of years that to me says like, yeah, this is a culture thing. Like that Kyrie shouldn't be allowed to do this. He shouldn't be allowed to make this extremely selfish decision and like get away from it from a teammate perspective, you know, like he's he's being a terrible teammate on top of just a bad human being by doing this. And so to call him out for this, I mean, it's essentially like, how is this any different from Ben Simmons' situation, for example? And he's being ostracized for that, for, you know, sitting out and trying to force this trade and whatever, and exerting his will upon the entire team, despite the fact that he's under contract and everything. You know, this is just that with Kyrie, except for it takes another level where he's using this platform that he's been given by being so good at basketball to affect the hearts and minds of a bunch of people. And he's using that to spew nonsense. And you can even see, I feel like the seeds are already being laid for him to eventually just take the vaccine and just say, screw it to this. Because at first his line was, you know, oh, this is because I don't trust the science. I want to do my own research. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to control what goes into my body, blah, blah, blah. Now all of a sudden he's pivoting, and there's a story that comes out today that says, it's not that I'm anti-vaccine. It's that I'm anti like discrimination against workers who don't want to get the vaccine. And it's like, so you are anti-vaccine in that case, because if you're pro people that refuse the vaccine, then you're anti-vaccine. That's just kind of how that works. But he's already kind of doing this like backtrack act. I don't really care what his rationale is. I think they made the right call. And the NBA, I mean, the NBA, to their discredit, I guess, I don't know if they have been hard enough on this whole thing. You know, I don't think it would be unreasonable for them to say, you guys are playing in arenas full of people, and part of our fan experience is being able to be right next to the court, literally getting sweat on and spit on by players. Like, you guys need to be vaccinated for public health, because we work in a public, you know, workplace, you know, an extremely public workplace. So you guys need to do this. And if you don't, then you can't play this year. Sorry. And I think they should have taken that hard line. Instead, they you know, took the method where they say, okay, well, you can still be non-vaccinated, but you have to do all these protocols and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, we're going to leave it up to municipalities and city governments and state governments and whatever to decide if you're allowed to do it there, which is why this whole thing has come about with New York and with San Francisco. So yeah, my overall stance on it is everybody should be vaccinated. I don't care to hear about needing to read more science, because what is an average non-scientist going to glean from whatever research they do anyway? I just think that I think that they made the right call from a team perspective, from a public health perspective, and just from a like everything perspective. I don't know. I think Brooklyn nailed this one, and maybe this makes Kyrie get the vaccination. Maybe it doesn't. If he sits out the whole season, I don't care. I'm sure the Nets will care, and they might even try to trade him to a place where people will care less about the vaccine and stuff like that. But I think it was the right move by them overall. That's my thought on it.
All right. I mean, I agree with that statement. I mean, at this point, like, there's not. Everyone keeps saying that you want to do more research. What research are you actually doing? Like, that a scientist or anyone else hasn't put in already, as you already stated. Like, for me, like, Kyrie has a choice. He is right in that, but it's a choice that is, in my opinion, selfish. And there are consequences to your choices. So
I was literally just about to say, if you didn't say that exact phrase, I was going to say that. I mean, everybody's allowed freedom of choice with things, but everybody should be responsible to deal with the consequences that come with it. And to suggest that there's not been, I mean, literally diseases in this country and abroad have been killed by vaccines for over a century now. This is why we have science, so that we can
it's not
destroy these destructive diseases. Yeah.
And it's not like this is anything new. Like, when you go to a school, they ask you for a vaccine. They ask you to get all these shots. So it's not like this is the first time. And
nobody has questioned that for years and years and years. Like,
and if someone chooses not to, like, okay, you cannot come to said school. That is your choice. Yes. Your consequence is that you cannot come here. So,
and the parent has to homeschool or whatever. Like, you become inconvenienced by the fact that you decide not to follow the mandated public health initiatives. And that's just that. You know what I mean? I think there's been some discussion too about, you see this, and not to turn this too political, but you see things everywhere about, oh, it's not right for the government to do this. They're stripping our freedoms away. And like, I tweeted about this recently. I was like, I think a lot of people mistake freedom for anarchy in the US and don't understand that, like, the function of a good government is to do things that benefit the entire population. So if getting a vaccine stops a potentially deadly and fast spreading disease from spreading and killing the most vulnerable citizens, then the US government is doing a good job. And it's as simple as that. And they're not stripping your freedoms away. They're not saying that you can't, you can't be like Kyrie Irving and make a choice not to get vaccinated. But they are saying that if you do that, there are going to be consequences. And life is going to be harder for you. And you're probably not going to be able to do a lot of things that you enjoy because you're not making the overall population safe at that point. And that's basically what has happened with Kyrie at this point, with the state of New York and the city of New York and all that stuff. Is just, he's run into a point here where it's like, you either do the simple thing and just get it over with, or you don't, and you continue to inconvenience yourself and your teammates. And the Nets, again, to their credit, have now basically just said, well, we're not going to put up with that. That's our choice, is to not put up with your choice to not get vaccinated.
So I'm actually shocked by what is it? Sean Marks, a couple other people, and then in the organization, then Kevin Durant and James Harden. Those are the people that made the decision on whether Kyrie will come back.
Supposedly, Harden and Kevin Durant, from another tweet today, I think, I forget who the reporter is for the Athletic, said it was Kevin Durant and James Harden weren't involved, but I don't believe that one bit. When you had earlier, I don't believe that one bit when you had them previously stated that they would be in this decision. I find it interesting that Steve Nash was in this decision, but that's another story. But go on, John.
So I mean, that's what's so interesting. Honestly, you guys are giving props to the Nets. Honestly, so am I, because you know what? If I'm being 100% honest, in NBA 2K world, having a part-time Kyrie sounds fantastic. Like, you get to save money on that contract. He's definitely going to be healthy by the time, it's playoff season. And, we'll see what happens with, the mandates and stuff like that towards the end. Yeah, he won't be at a home game, but, that'll be better for our bench. Like, in on paper, if I was the Nets, this sounds fantastic to me. So I do give props to them for actually taking, a hard stance, for morale, not really caring that they're going to save money on the books that way. And Alex, you said selfish, but I think you were kind of talking about, society. I think he's selfish towards his teammates, Like I don't think he's taking into consideration how much that's gonna mess everything up. If you play like, the NBA does it. It's not like NFL, right? Where it's like one home game and then one away game. No, it's like you could be on a stretch, or like, what if you're on a West Coast stretch and then you have to go to California for a couple of days? That's it. He goes home. Like, you know what I mean? It really messes up the actual squad. And as basketball fans, you could be a casual fan, you could be, a diehard Knicks fan. You know what continuity does. So from that aspect, I actually give credit to the Nets because I think honestly would have been beneficial if he was a part-time player. I think that would have been cool. Like for him, he would have been healthy. They would have won. So I'm cool with that. Just like his decision. I don't think he's gonna actually take the vaccine. I think if he was, he would have did like Wiggins and just took it already. I think that's kind of what Cam Newton's doing, but that's a whole different sport, whole different story where he needs a job, and I think he's secretly getting the vaccine so he can get a job. Players like Kyrie, like, I mean, I don't know too much about his off the field stuff, but I know he like just joined his Native American tribe, right? He does all the sage stuff before every game. It doesn't seem like a kind of guy who's going to get a vaccine, especially, that's mandated. Yeah, I don't know. Everyone's talking about the federal government taking away your rights. It's kind of silly. The federal government is literally making you take it, even if you work for the federal government. So you know what I mean? It's not like a private business type deal. So I don't know. That's really all I have to say about it. I'm happy that the Nets made that decision. I don't think they're going to be able to trade him. I think that everyone is not really taking into consideration how heavy it is that his agent came out and said he's going to retire upon being traded. Like, the worst thing that you can do to your player is take away his contract, and he's literally saying, I don't want it. So what can you can't discipline him. So if Philly was like, we'll trade you Simmons for Kyrie, and then Kyrie doesn't show up, I don't think there's takes backsies in the NBA. Like, I think if that player shows up and retires, like, it's over. So I don't know if they're gonna be able to trade him. I think they're kind of screwed. You know what I'm really interested in, and where this is really gonna come into like fruition? I'm curious what the NBA PA is going to do. Like, what is the Players Association going to do? How are they going to navigate this? How are they going to try to get his money back? Are they just going to, leave him be because it's only certain states? Like, that's what I think is interesting. Other than that,
the vice president of the NBPA.
Yeah,
that's even crazier to say that out loud.
It's his union, basically. You know what I mean? Like, he's at the top of the e-board. So it's really kind of interesting how that's going to handle it. That's what I'm interested in. As for the Nets, dude, James Harden as a point guard is just better. They're better. Like, they're if you think the Nets are going to regress because of this, like, I'm sorry, you are so wrong. Like, you could hate on them all you want. They're going to actually be better without Kyrie Irving. So from a basketball standpoint, this is fine. If he does decide to get a vaccine halfway through the season, like, Alex Wolfe is pointing out, that'd even be even better. Like, imagine he comes back fully healthy, ready to go by, the All-Star break. I don't know. I just feel like they're gonna use this to their advantage, and somehow this is all gonna be great for them. that's just how I see it coming. For some, I don't know if it's just my Knicks, pessimism coming through, but like, I just feel like this is gonna be perfect for the Nets at the end.
I don't think you're wrong that Durant and Harden by themselves are plenty good. I mean, that they're enough by themselves to potentially win you a championship. So, it's crazy to say the glut of talent that they have there, that they can take Kyrie off that team and be totally fine. And, potentially be
a beat.
Yeah. Like, just not skip a beat. Maybe, like you said, even function slightly better. It
sucks.
That sucks. It sucks. I just like I like being in the Knicks lane where there's no expectations for a championship. Yeah. And so we could just enjoy it, because that is the other thing, is that if there isn't a championship for the Nets this year, it's a bust. And it's a bust for every year that they don't win one, and every year that they waste these guys dwindling primes without winning a championship is a bust. So they better hope it comes sooner than later, because otherwise
I'm hoping it never comes. So
I'm hoping it never comes too. I certainly hope that too. I think that'd be very funny. And if the Knicks manage to get one first, but yeah,
then we can just go back and drag Stephen A for his ridiculous take on that the Nets took over New York, because that was just the worst take.
He took it all back today. He said the Nets need to trade Kyrie.
Yeah, I I think nobody saw the Knicks getting good again anytime soon. And I think that was the biggest mistake with all those takes, was that they thought, oh, the Nets are going to be like a 1-2 seed, be a championship contender for like 5 straight years. And the Knicks are going to be rendered, useless because they aren't good. And then the Knicks went ahead and got good way ahead of schedule and totally threw a wrench in that. And now there's no shot that like the Nets marketing team will ever be able to make a dent. I think that at best they maybe had a chance of maybe snaking away like 25% of prospective Knicks fans or something like that. Like ones that like rebellious kids that don't want to root for the team that dad roots for, and go with the other team just to be different, that sort of thing. Nobody's gonna do that shit now. They just like, everybody loves the Knicks. They're just such a fun team. Like
Let me just make one comment about this Gen Z going on. So I'm like I coach and mentor like college kids and high school kids. Let me tell you something. They think it's absolutely bizarre that we root for laundry. They think it's crazy that people are just like Knicks fans or like Nets fans or like Lakers fans. Like they're just like, no, we like players. They have personalities. We follow them. We like them. We buy their jersey, and wherever they go, we just follow. So yeah. I don't know. Like people just love KD. Like KD can go to the Hornets, and people are gonna be like the biggest Hornets fans now.
Except for who even likes KD? KD is so unlikable.
I don't know. I honestly disagree. I'm on the like. I love what KD has done since he's been outed as this like soft cupcake guy. Like when OKC like opened the door and like had like cupcake mascots, and the way he handled that, and he just after that just became the man. Like. He's like, okay, you guys making fun of me for burners? All right, I'm just gonna do it all on my own account. Like, just like abuse everyone and like come out, and I don't know. I actually kind of dig the new Kevin Durant. I hate to say it out loud.
You like the villain?
I hate to say it out loud, but like he just I would love to have Kevin Durant. He really did change my mind with the whole coming back with the Achilles. Like his swag coming back with a torn Achilles, which no athlete has ever done. I don't know. I can't say anything bad about KD. I just can't do it.
Oh. All right. I can't I like KD as a player too. But we're gonna move on from this topic.
To be clear, I love him as a purely a basketball player.
Yeah,
I don't rock with KD the person. I don't like him at all. I don't like how he carries himself.
I think the one thing I don't like is I'm his crew that he rocks with, like the guys who like that you sometimes see on Twitter who like give their basketball takes. I'm like, I do not know what you're saying. Like there's one guy, I can't remember his name, but it was like wildest basketball take. I'm like, okay. And then everyone's just like trashing him. And then he's like, I can't wait to fire you and be in position to fire. I'm like, dude, what? It's Twitter, man. Like just take a break, dude. Log off, man. Take a break, go for a walk, do something else. But let's move on to a more interesting topic. And then we can ask Wolf some Jets questions and get him out of here, because it's going over the time that I told the man, but it's okay.
I got no limits. I'm good. I'm just trying to watch
truly a Strickland way. No limits whatsoever. I love it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to watch a couple Squid Game episodes before bed. That's it. I'm working on that show. Finally, catching the hype. It's been good, by the way. Oh, it's good.
It's worth the hype. I started last week, and I
cannot watch anything that everyone is so hyped about, but I might get on this.
I would also definitely recommend don't watch the dubbed version. Watch it with subtitles, because the dubbed version was bad and the subtitled version is good.
The dubbed version is the one I'm watching, and my fiance is like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And I agree. It is like, this is comical. Like this is like even worse than like anime dub over. It's like,
it's pretty bad. I've tried to do that with a few Netflix shows, and they're really not good at dubbing their live action stuff, man. It's terrible. It makes like old like 80s Godzilla movies look good.
You know what's the worst part? You know what's the worst part? If you have subtitles on and you had the dub version, you're like, oh wow, you guys are way off on what they're trying to actually say. Yeah. It's like, woo!
Absolutely. Yeah.
My goodness.
Like watching Arabic. That's like watching any American movie, or like especially American war movies where they have like people yelling in Arabic, and they'll like curse in Arabic or something, and the subtitle will be like like yells or something like something so silly, like go away. It's like, no, he did not say go away, dude.
Oh man. The other topic that happened this weekend, though, trying to get back on track, is that we saw 18 NBA players fraudulently you take can't even say it, healthcare. The NBA was it the NBA wealth. What's the actual term of it? It is the bargained health and welfare benefit plan offered by the NBA. 18 NBA players have been charged with federal felony offense of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud. Guys, and like the total is like $3.94 million, which comes out to like $280,000
like
each.
a game.
Yeah, it's like
literally one basketball game. They're gonna go to jail for one
Kyrie's
basketball
check that he would miss if they were still on the roster is $380,000. Like legit one game check. We're talking one game check. Like I'm not going to judge everyone's pockets. Everyone has like, even if you're making millions, don't know. But guys, like this is like, do you have letterheads the same? Like everyone's going to the dentist the same day for the same root canal, same office. One guy's in Taiwan and not even in America. Like what's going on here, guys? It's a little too comical. But Alex, what are you thinking?
I think it's hilarious. I mean, also, all right. So from like a human perspective, I'm like, this is kind of shitty because
yes,
players unions fight really hard for this sort of stuff.
Yes.
Like, especially, I mean, this is more so a case in the NFL where you're dealing with all the concussions and all the unknown effects, where the NFL for so long wasn't willing to give a dime to anybody that was suffering from CTE or any long-term football effects. You know, you have to fight tooth and nail as a players association for this shit. And then these dudes are just like, oh, let's defraud that. Like guys that made like to your point, lots of millions of dollars in their career. Like I was even thinking about like Big Baby Davis. Like, yes. I know he's the one name that I remember that was on it. And I'm like, dude, you signed a lot of contracts that you weren't worth back in the day. Like you made way more money than you had any business making in an NBA uniform. And what happened?
Can you keep it?
Like,
yeah.
Like, why are you now defrauding this system and potentially screwing over? I mean, what it really comes down to prison. Yeah, first off, going to prison. I mean, first off, like, why would you even risk that? But then secondly,
22 years, potentially 22 years, 20 years for conspiracy, 2 years for the frauds, for the wire and healthcare frauds.
I mean, that's a lot of jail time for something so silly, that really they didn't need. And the other thing too is that you're not even like, by doing this, you're not really like screwing the NBA. You're mostly screwing the role players, like the true journeymen, like the dudes that, I'm trying to think he's not a good example. I was gonna say like Langston Galloway or something like that, like someone who plays on mostly minimum contracts the whole year. What's that?
Langston Galloway's a nice journeyman. Come from the D League before he was even the G League.
I mean, he got like a 2-year, $18 million contract at one point. I think that was what I was thinking of. But
if we're gonna talk like it would, like if his brother was in the league, like Giannis's brother, Thanasis, like he would be like a true example.
Exactly.
Like
this is that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Like the guys that have a window to make $1 million a year for 10 years, and then you don't know what they're going to be able to do after that. You know what I mean? And still $10 million is nothing to sneeze at, but it's a lot less than these like guys that got these big multi-million-dollar contracts. And, so those guys, especially after they exit the league, if they didn't really have a good contingency plan, they might rely on that health insurance and that coverage that comes from the NBA. And now you're just giving the NBA an excuse to potentially be like, well, look what happened when we gave you guys these benefits. You just abused them and made a mockery of the fact that we were giving you something. So now we're never going to give you this again. And you guys are on your own. You made millions of dollars in your time in the league and blah, blah, blah. And, you don't deserve this shit. So, it's shitty all around. It's comical to look at, but then like, I bet you that everybody in the NBPA, except for maybe Kyrie, who probably doesn't give a shit about medical anything.
VP.
The VP, but the people in the NBPA are probably like, shit, this is not good for us. Like we're really going to be raked over the coals as far as this stuff is concerned in the next like labor agreement and all that stuff
coming up.
I think that's next year. Like that's the next season we're talking about. So to your point, Alex, like these players, this is once again like you're being selfish for yourself for like something you don't even need, like $280,000 what you needed for what you're doing. Like you could play internationally and still make more money and get treated well. You can just go that route. You
get
didn't
some
have
appearance
to.
fees. My God, like
do
kids' birthday parties or shit. I don't know, like
cameo.
Yeah, go be in a movie. Like you could easily be in a movie. Like they need basketball players in movies. Like go be. I want to bring up Kyrie again. Go be the Uncle Drew movie. Go be the other side.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But no, like definitely labor like negotiations is going to be very interesting when you see this come up, and you're like, well, now you're going to have owners and everyone else thinking like, well, this is now potential possibility that we could have another set of players who can defraud us. Maybe not for the healthcare, but maybe for something else. Should we pull back? You know, even though we're getting all these TV rights, what are we going to do now? So it's not a good look for these guys, obviously. I mean, especially with regards to like the legal ramifications behind it. But it was just I find it comical, even though it's not necessarily comical, that millionaires are just going out there asking for $280,000 and going about it and just like not even like a discreet way. Like you're not even doing it in a smart way. Like why at what point was this even worth your time to go do that? Like that's just the bigger question. Like why would you even take the time, the energy, the space, the atmosphere, as my guy Raisi would say, to go do this?
Speaking of why the hell you'd waste our time, Alex Wolfe, I have to ask you, are the Jets wasting their time with Mr. Zach Wilson?
I don't think they're wasting their time. I mean, I advertised before we started recording my spicy take from the draft, which was I was a Trey Lance guy. I was very much on the Trey Lance train.
Such an interesting one.
Disgusting.
I think you're the first Jets fan to ever hear say not tank for Trevor. Like obviously, probably you did want to tank for Trevor Lawrence, but it's like Trevor Lawrence, or it's like Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields. It was probably like in that order that people were like asking for. All right.
Yeah.
And then it was like, you're coming out here with Trey Lance, and it's like, huh? Like, everyone's looking at you. Everyone's looking at you kind of funny. It's just like, you sure about that take?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't hate Fields either. I'm just not, I don't know what it is about Wilson that I'm not totally sold on. You didn't
like High School Musical. It's okay, man. Look, he
that's
looks like
part of it. Yeah, that's part. He does look very High School Musical. The other thing though is just I thought that Lance had all the physical tools. So like if the Jets could have just, I mean, how many journeymen are out there that you can just sign for a year? You know what I mean? Or I mean, I guess they could have kept Darnold for one more year. That just would have been really awkward though. Like I'm glad they just kind of put that situation to bed. But just sign a journeyman for 1 year. Let Lance develop, come in with zero expectations, get him 5 starts at the end of the year or something like that, and see how it goes. And then work in some gadget plays for him, get him on the field, just like the Niners were doing. I think that he's got the tools. Like he looks to me. And I mean, I think some of this has kind of borne itself out a little bit. It's going to take some time, obviously, because they're both rookies. So I'm not willing to pass judgment on either yet. But when I was looking at Lance and like what he can do in his skill set, my first thought was like, this is like a modern day Donovan McNabb if he works out. And I loved Donovan McNabb as a player. Like I thought he was one of the most entertaining and talented players I've ever seen in my life. So I think that's sort of where I was looking with him. But with the Jets in general, I mean, I don't know. I know this start's been rough to this year, but anyone who thought they were going to make the playoffs or something was kidding themselves. I mean, I saw some people out there being like, did you think they were?
Oh no, they're not really think. Like I wouldn't like, I'm not gonna like fight you to it, but I was like, hoping like, there's the extra wild card, extra game, maybe just like sneak that the division's kind of whack. Like,
I thought if absolutely everything went right, maybe they could have competed for a playoff spot. But I do think that a lot of people kind of went into it with Wilson thinking like, oh, they took him because he's more ready. So obviously that means that he's going to be like Patrick Mahomes from day one. And, then there's all those quotes that came out, all the various analysts being like, oh my God, during preseason, he looks the best of any quarterback I've ever seen look in preseason training camp ever. He's going to be the second coming of the second coming. Like
and more Mahomes.
Yeah, another Mahomes, about to say. It's just, I don't see it. I always thought it was going to take at least a year. Rookie quarterbacks, that's just how it works. He's had his flashes so far. He had that. He's dimed up a couple guys with some really nice passes, and he's thrown some really shitty ones, and had some really terrible games. So I think you just got to take the good with the bad. You just got to hope that he's. I mean, I will say the one thing about him is he does seem made pretty well for the bright lights. Yeah. So I don't think that he's gonna have the issues like what Darnold had, where I just think that Darnold struggled with that spotlight, and with the constant scrutiny of this media market and everything. I do think Wilson is pretty well prepared for that. He seems to be able to just let things roll off his back and not really let that affect his confidence or his long-term. Like, he's very much like a next play type of guy, I think, which I don't think Darnold ever was. I mean, I'll never forget my whole life, and neither will probably like any Jets fan, the "I'm seeing ghosts" quote from Sam Darnold live on television. That they for whatever reason decided to air. It's also on ESPN for kind of being assholes and airing that quote, because that's not the type of thing you put out there.
We know all about those guys.
Yeah, but they did that live during a game too. I'm like, come on, it's nothing sacred. Like, I know you've got him mic'd up, but like, come on.
And then I mean, honestly, and then Kyle Van Noy tried to bring that up again this year. That really pissed me off, actually.
Yeah, I hate the Patriots.
Come on, Van Noy, you stink.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are so bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. Really, you got Mac Jones, you got my man
McCorkle
over here, and you're
congrats,
all
you beat up on the Jets. Like, good job.
That's the only team, right? That's the only team. They barely beat the Texans last week, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I digress. So, you think we're okay? You think we're okay with Zach, right? I personally think he's getting a lot of scrutiny, man. I think nobody is really caring the fact that we have rookie offensive coordinator who's never done it, rookie head coach who's never done it.
You're without Becton.
We're missing our star left tackle,
youngest NFL team.
Most rookies, our star, defensive lineman that we signed gets hurt. Another defensive lineman that we signed gets hurt. Our star, the linebacker that we signed gets hurt. I don't know.
Our safety doesn't want to play for us anymore.
Our safety is being annoying. He's about to write a slanderous piece.
One of your other most important skill positions is a rookie too, like with Elijah Moore. I mean,
everything's tough. We have no tight end. It's definitely tough out here, but I'm still
so I'll say this
weirdly optimistic.
Yeah, this was my thing, right? And we talk about this stuff, I think, more with the NBA, because the NFL just seems to always have this magical clause that you can just bend the salary cap to your will. But like the Saints did for years, when they had like half the salary cap and dead money, yet still could manage to pay. Could manage to pay Drew Brees and a whole team somehow, and had the team be like title contenders every year. Whatever.
The Rams signed Jalen Ramsey. They don't care at all. Aaron Donald, Stafford.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no problem.
But come on in.
But yet Woody Johnson is like the Oklahoma City Thunder out here. He's like, whoa, how much are you paying this guy? Yo, watch out.
But I will say, I think it's smart, the strategy that they took in these last two drafts, and I think it's going to set them up well for these next few years, where they drafted really four, if you count Elijah Moore too, four of the highest priced positions in football. They drafted and spent good draft capital on. And so they have Becton still with, including this year, 4 years on his rookie deal. You have Wilson and Vera Tucker with 5 years. You have Moore with 5 years as well, I believe, as a second round pick. I think they signed the same deals. So you lock up, if those guys work out, you have them all those high value, high leverage positions that teams have to make really difficult decisions about all the time, locked in on value contracts until you have to make the difficult decision on them. And you can build out like a great team around them in the meantime. And so, I'm not rushing things. I don't, I think some people came into this year. I mean, I think it sounds like you had a reasonable expectation of, if things break the right way, maybe the Jets will do this. Some people I think are already willing to be like, the rebuild sucks, cancel it, start over again. Like, Zach Wilson's been bad for 5 games, whatever, like, throw it out, we're done. And that's stupid. That is so stupid. Like, and if any of those are Knicks fans, I want to just like slap them in the face and be like, what have you learned? Have you learned nothing? Like, if you're just a little bit patient, things can work out for you. If you get the right person in charge, which I think football, it's a lot harder. Basketball, you can turn around on a dime. So like the Knicks get Leon Rose, and now things are looking pretty good after 2 years because he signed the right coach. Your roster is a lot smaller. One player makes a way bigger difference in the NBA than they do in the NFL. The NFL takes years to build up, a successful program, and they're doing it by filling the positions that cost the most money with the players that cost the least, but that also requires being patient. And I think that's just lost on so many people in New York sports too. It's like the same thing. I'm also a Mets fan, and the same thing happened with the Mets this year. Maybe it was slightly more justified from fans to be pissed this year with the Mets, but like you've been begging for years for a new ownership group. You finally get it. You get the richest owner in baseball. And one of his first things, he goes out and gets you a star shortstop and spends an ass ton of money to keep him there for 13 years. And yet, because, things didn't completely turn around in 1 year, people were already like, oh, Cohen's no better than the Wilpons. He sucks. This, that, the other. It's like, learn a little patience, people. Like, I think we've learned in New York sports to stop being so freaking moody, just live with it a little, just live with the shitty years, and then you get rewarded with some good ones if you trust good management.
Shout out to the Knicks.
Yeah, shout out to the Knicks.
Shout out to the Knicks for sure. Yeah. And no, I agree with you, Alex. Like not too long ago, I said, we finally hosed down this dumpster fire, and now we can actually start. Like now, it still stinks. It's going to stink for a while. Now you can actually start cleaning this stuff up. And actually
I think we had some industrial strength Febreze, because I don't smell anything anymore with the Knicks. It smells like roses over here. They must be doing Planet Fitness with the backpacks, spraying the sanitizer everywhere, because I don't smell anything anymore.
Oh, that's good. But Alex, thank you for your time today, man. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun talking with you again, all aspects of the Knicks, talking NBA, talking New York Jets, because of course we got to get some Jets topics in here. But please let our listeners know where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah. So if you did a great job at the beginning, you probably remembered some things that I forget to bring up. So you can follow me on Twitter at the Alex Wolfe. Definitely check out the Strickland. That's the strict.land or at the Strickland on Twitter. We also have a Patreon now, which we were really excited to launch. We have some exclusive podcasts that come out on there. Shwinny Poo, who was just on here recently, does a lot of work in the podcast front there, and you get to hear his voice a lot more. Also, there's a tier where you can get some exclusive new articles from two of my favorite writers of ours, Jack Huntley and Matt Miranda. So they're fantastic. So definitely check out our Patreon. Check out the merch store, which I made sure to wear some stuff. There's Strickland snapback hats. This is one of the OGs, but RJ Barrett hoodies, all kinds of cool stuff on there. That's the strickland.bigcartel.com is our shop there. Also, of course, check out Locked On Knicks if you want to hear my voice more. We're 5 days a week now in season, so we're bringing you five. Yeah,
there we go,
on, baby.
Lots of podcasts. 5 podcasts a week from Locked On Knicks. So definitely check that out. That's at Locked On Knicks, wherever you get podcasts, soon to be on YouTube, which is why I've got a whole little setup now. I'm going to be drawing stuff on my chalkboard thing on the show. I've decided that's going to be part of the thing here. And then also, my work for Clutch Points, which I'm starting to do this year, waiting on my credential to officially be accepted, but then I should be at the Garden covering the games for them and writing. That'll show up on clutchpoints.com, and that should be a lot of fun too. So lots of stuff going on. I think I got all of it. Also check out Posting and Toasting too. I think I'm officially kind of stepping down from there after a long run, but they also put out good work too. So definitely check that website out. But that's it. I did it. I made it through the whole thing.
You did it.
It's like Decent and Merrill doing out their closing outro for their podcast.
The AKAs and everything, right?
Yep, exactly. Thank you, Alex, for coming on. Everyone, please make sure to go check out his work. He does an awesome job. I didn't even get to mention that you used to write for Sports Illustrated Knicks site at the beginning too. You used to do that too. You did. Been following your work for a while, man. You do awesome stuff. But make sure to check out Alex Wolfe, everyone. And thank you again for tuning in for another long episode. We're getting guys from the Strickland on here, it's going to be a long episode. Just be prepared for that. So thank you all again for tuning in for another Knicks, Jets, etc. podcast of the Knicks episode. Messed that one up, but it's all good. Make sure
Knicks episode of the Knicks, Jets, etc. podcast, Alex.
There you go. Thank you for clearing up for me. And if you listen to this on Apple Podcasts, please make sure to give us a 5-star review. Please make sure to leave a comment that helps us out oh so dearly. And if you don't listen to us on Apple Podcasts, it's okay. truly is okay. We're on Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, Alexa, Stitcher, you name it, we are there. On top of that, we're also on YouTube. Please make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and hit that notification bell. Last but certainly not least, please make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for another Knicks episode of the Knicks, Jets, Etc. podcast. We'll catch you later this week for another Jets episode.
God help us. Let's go, Knicks.